I sit on the granite spine of a Cascadia peak, watching the sun bleed across a horizon that shouldn't exist. It has been exactly 1 year since the triple impacts shattered the world's silence, and the flash melting of the polar ice rewrote the maps in a matter of hours. The anniversary feels heavy, a physical weight pressing down on my chest as I look out over the shimmering salt water that now chokes the valleys I once patrolled. I remember the roar of the mega tsunamis as they tore through the lowlands. I was on vacation, a park ranger seeking a week of solitude in the high country, only to find myself a witness to the end of the old world from this very summit. The sound was something I still hear in my dreams, a low-frequency tectonic growl, followed by the sound of a billion trees snapping like dry matchsticks as the wall of water climbed the slopes. I stood here, paralyzed, watching as the blue of the Pacific moved inland with an unstoppable, predatory grace. The geography of my life was erased in a single afternoon, leaving me an island dweller in a mountain range that had become an archipelago. The morning air is thin and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and the incongruous smell of salt spray from 1,000 feet below. My first year in this new world has been defined by a descent into the primitive, tempered only by the few pieces of gear I managed to keep dry. I look down at my hands, callous and stained with wood smoke and fish scales, then back at the vast expanse of the new Cascadia Sea. The peaks that used to be towering landmarks are now just jagged islands emerging from a brine. It is a quiet world now, stripped of the hum of engines and the chatter of tourists. The only sounds are the wind through the dead needles and the distant, rhythmic crashing of the tide against the cliffs. To my left, a glacier that has survived the initial melt groans under its own weight, a reminder that the earth is still shifting, still settling into its new, waterlogged skin. I begin my morning inventory, a ritual of survival that I perform with the solemnity of a prayer. My primary tool for movement is my weathered 10-foot kayak, currently tucked deep under a granite rock overhang to shield it from the degrading intensity of the mountain sun. Its plastic hull is scarred and gouged, each mark a memory of a narrow escape from a jagged piece of submerged debris or a rough landing on an uncharted shore. I run my fingers over a particularly deep scratch near the bow, remembering the day a floating shipping container nearly pinned me against a cliff face. Next to the boat lies my tent, a high-altitude model with carefully patched seams, and my sleeping bag, which has lost its loft but remains the only thing standing between me and the freezing alpine nights. Every zipper is cleaned, every strap is checked for fraying. In this environment, neglect is a slow-acting poison. I run my hands over the rugged fabric of my pack, feeling the familiar lumps and edges of my kit. Clipped to the exterior is my most prized piece of technology, a small monocrystalline solar battery bank. I chose this model specifically because it is far more efficient than the older polycrystalline versions I used to see tourists carrying. Even in the hazy, smoke-tinted light of the new atmosphere, these dark cells drink in the sun with surprising speed. It is the silent heartbeat of my camp, providing the trickle of power that keeps my meager digital world alive. Without it, the silence of these peaks would be absolute, and the isolation would likely have broken me months ago. The solar pack stays tethered to my bag, its surface angled toward the eastern light. It serves as the lifeblood for my phone and my Kindle, both wrapped in 3 layers of heavy-duty waterproof casing. The Kindle is my sanctuary, a small plastic slab that contains the sum total of my cultural heritage. Inside its memory is a digital library that has kept me sane through the long, lonely stretches of mountain winter. I have survival guides that teach me how to identify edible fungi and treat infections with forest herbs. I have classic novels that remind me of what humanity used to be, and more importantly, I have cookbooks. I spend hours reading recipes for complex meals, slow-roasted lamb with rosemary, garlic-infused pastas, and fresh citrus salads. I can't cook any of it, but the descriptions provide a psychological lifeline when I am chewing on bland, salt-dried trout or boiled roots. The mere act of imagining the scent of sautéing onions helps to suppress the hollow ache of malnutrition. For emergencies or the long stretches of overcast weather that frequently roll in from a new coast, I rely on an integrated wind-up charger. The mechanical crank is loud and tedious to use, requiring hours of effort for a few percentage points of battery, but the rhythmic clicking provides a sense of agency over my own existence. It is the sound of refusal, a refusal to let the dark win. When the fog rolls in so thick I can't see the end of my ridge, I sit in the dark and crank that handle, the physical exertion warming my blood and giving my hands something to do other than shake. I stand and walk to the edge of the ridge, looking down toward the drowned forest. It is a haunting graveyard that marks the new shoreline. Before the impacts, these were dense stand of ancient evergreens that sheltered elk, black bears, and the occasional hiker. Now, they are skeletal pillars of dead, gray withstanding in the rising brine. The salt water has poisoned them from the roots up, stripping them of their needles and bark until they look like bleached bones protruding from the earth. They stand in the surf, creaking and groaning as the tides pull at their rotting foundations, a vertical graveyard that I must navigate whenever I need to descend to the water to scavenge or fish. The sight of them always brings a fresh wave of grief, a reminder that the world below is not just gone, but transformed into something alien. I remember walking these same woods when they were vibrant and green, the floor thick with ferns and the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. I used to worry about bark beetle infestations and trail maintenance. Those problems seem like relics from a fairy tale now. The trees don't rustle in the wind anymore. They clatter like dry bones. Beneath the surface of the salt water, I can sometimes see the dark shapes of the lower branches, reaching upward like the hands of drowning men. It's a landscape designed to remind you of what you've lost every time you look down. The forest below used to be my office. I knew every trail, every drainage, and every hidden meadow. Now, those places are hundreds of feet underwater, inhabited by schools of fish and the drifting remains of the world I knew. I think about the towns that sat at the base of these mountains, the gas stations, the schools, the homes. They are all part of the vertical graveyard now, their upper stories becoming reefs for a new ocean ecosystem. It's a terrifying thought, imagining a grocery store aisle where the only shoppers are perch and silt. But I have to push those images aside. Sorrow burns calories, and in this high-altitude survival game, calories are the only currency that matters. I have established my primary land camp here, on this high, stable ridge, because it offers the ultimate tactical advantage. The granite here is solid and unlikely to slide, even with the increased rainfall and seismic shifts. The elevation keeps me far above the reach of the unpredictable storm surges and megatides that still batter the lower slopes. From this vantage point, I can track the movement of the large, desperate land base camps that have formed in the larger, flatter basins inland. I see their smoke, and occasionally I hear the distant, hollow sound of their conflicts, gunshots, or the dull boom of scavenge explosives. I stay away from them. I've seen how quickly the veneer of civilization rots when the grocery stores disappear. I prefer the isolation of the heights, where the only tracks I have to worry about belong to the mountain lion or the bear. Up here, the air is clean, and the only politics are those of predator and prey. Here, I am a ghost in the fog, a ranger without a park, maintaining my gear in peak condition. I check the solar bank's indicator. 3 green lights. It is a small victory, but in this world, small victories are the only ones you get. I spend the rest of the morning tightening the lines on my tent and checking the seals on my kayak. Every piece of equipment must be perfect. A single failure, a torn seam that lets in the damp, a cracked hull that takes on water, a dead battery that leaves me in total mental isolation, could be a death sentence. I use a small bit of precious oil to lubricate the hinges on my multi-tool, watching the metal gleam in the sun. Maintenance is a form of discipline. It keeps the mind sharp and the hands busy. I spend several hours organizing my small stash of scavenged goods. I have a few cans of vegetables I managed to pull from a half-submerged pantry months ago, a small tin of salt I've been rationing like gold, and a collection of waterproof matches I keep in a vacuum-sealed jar. I treat these items with the reverence of holy relics. I also spend time maintaining my fishing gear, untangling lines and sharpening hooks. The lake fishing higher up has been decent, but the salt water encroaching on the lower streams is changing the fish populations, and I have to adapt my techniques constantly. I've started experimenting with lures made from bits of bright plastic and bird feathers. Try to mimic the new species that are moving into the flooded valleys. As the afternoon sun begins to dip, the shadows of the peaks stretch across the water like long, dark fingers. I sit on the edge of the granite and pull out my phone, scrolling through old photos that I've seen 1,000 times. Photos of my parents at their retirement party, my friends at a bar that is now 300 feet underwater, and the parks as they used to look green, vibrant, and dry. It's a dangerous habit, one that risks the mental escape turning into a mental collapse. But on the anniversary, I allow myself indulgence. I look at the face of my younger self, smiling in a crisp green uniform, and I barely recognize the man. That version of me didn't know how to get a fish with a shard of glass or how to track a cougar through a rock slide. I look out toward the horizon, where the sky meets the new sea. The air is clear today, stripped of the usual mountain haze. For a moment, I imagine I can see the silhouette of something. A ship, or perhaps just a trick of the light and the salt spray. My heart skips, a frantic drumming against my ribs, but I quickly dampen the hope. Hope is as dangerous as sorrow if it makes you careless. It makes you look at the horizon instead of the ground in front of your feet. I know the mainlanders in the high interior are out there somewhere, likely struggling just as hard as I am to rebuild a life in the ruins of the Central Plains or the high desert. They will send scouts eventually. They have to. They will need to know what the new coastline looks like, and they will need the knowledge that only someone like me, someone who has survived on the edge, can provide. Until then, I will remain here on my ridge. I will boil my water, I will charge my batteries, and I will keep my kayak ready. I will be the master of this jagged coastline, a silent sentry waiting for the world to find its way back to me. I check the solar pack one last time before the sun vanishes behind the western peaks, its dark cells finally cooling in the twilight. It is still holding strong. I am still holding strong. I crawl into my tent as the first stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, the quiet of the Cascadia wilderness settling over me like a heavy shroud. The mountain is silent, save for the wind and the distant, lonely creak of the drowned trees. Another day survived, another year begun. I close my eyes and try not to dream of the water. I wake before dawn, the air inside my tent thick with the scent of old nylon, and the lingering, sharp chill of the alpine night. Today is a scavenging day, a necessity that always brings a cold knot of tension to my stomach. I crawl out of my sleeping bag and begin the process of breaking camp, my movements efficient and practiced after a year of relentless repetition. My ridge camp is high and stable, but to find the supplies I need to survive another month, I have to descend from the safety of the peaks and enter the vertical graveyard. The transition from the clean, thin air of the heights to the heavy, salt-choked atmosphere of the new coastline is always a mental hurdle I struggle to clear. I drag my 10-foot kayak from its rock overhang, the plastic hull letting out a hollow scrape that sounds like a scream in the early morning silence. I begin the slow, grueling descent toward the new shoreline. The mountainside is a treacherous incline of loose shale, jagged basalt, and salt-crusted granite. Every step is a gamble with my ankles. I've rigged a harness from climbing rope to help distribute the weight of the boat, but it still feels like a lead weight pulling at my shoulders. The kayak groans as it scrapes against the stone, a sound that echoes off the canyon walls and makes me wince. I worry that the noise will draw unwanted attention, but up here, there's usually no one left to listen. By the time I reach the water's edge, my breath is coming in ragged, burning gasps, and the sun is just starting to burn through thick coastal haze that clings to the waterline like a wet shroud. I launch into the drowned forest, the kayak slicing through water that is unervingly clear and still. It feels like paddling over a dream. Beneath me, the tops of massive evergreens, cedars, and hemlocks that stood for centuries reach upward like skeletal fingers. Their needles are long gone, replaced by a fine, ghostly coating of gray silt that sways in the slow underwater currents. I paddle in total silence, the only sound a rhythmic dip and swirl of my blades. My eyes scan the surface constantly, looking for the telltale ripple of a submerged roof or the dangerous, jagged edge of a highway sign. I'm heading toward the ruins of a city that once sat at the base of these mountains, a place that used to be a bustling hub for tourists and locals heading into the Cascades. Now, it is a nightmare of glass and steel protruding from the brine. As I approach the submerged skyline, the scale of the disaster is overwhelming, even a year later. Only the topmost floors of the tallest buildings remain above the water, looking like jagged, decaying teeth in a broken jaw. The lower levels are completely inundated, turned into a dark, silent world of submerged offices, flooded apartments, and drowned dreams. Navigating this interior is a physical and psychological struggle. I have to steer the kayak through narrow gaps between skyscrapers, being careful not to catch the hull on jagged rebar or broken glass that lurks just beneath the surface. A single puncture here will be a death sentence. There is no dry land for miles in some directions, only these vertical tombs. I find my target, a high-rise luxury apartment building that seems more structurally stable than its leaning neighbors. I paddle through what was once a grand floor-to-ceiling window on the 30th floor, the kayak gliding over a submerged conference table that still has a dried coffee cup sitting on its surface. The interior is a tomb of silt, mildew, and salt decay. The wallpaper is peeling in long, wet strips that look like hanging skin. I tie the boat to a heavy metal filing cabinet that has resisted the pull of the tides and step out into the hallway. The floor is slick with mountain runoff and salt slime, and the air smells of stagnant moisture, old carpet, and the slow rot of a world that wasn't designed to be underwater. Searching for usable dry goods is a slow, methodical process that requires a strong stomach and a lot of patience. I move from room to room, checking high shelves and kitchen pantries that might have stayed above the initial surge or the subsequent rising of the tides. In one unit, I find a few sealed bags of rice that have survived the damp, tucked away in a plastic bin. I find a jar of peanut butter that feels like a miracle in my hands, its seal still intact. I hold it for a moment, the weight of it a tangible promise of calories. I move to the next floor up, climbing a service staircase that feels dangerously unstable. Every creak of the building's steel frame makes my heart hammer against my ribs. I know these structures aren't meant to sit in corrosive salt water forever. Eventually, the foundations will fail, and the sea will reclaim them entirely, pulling them down into the crushing depths. While I work, stripping shelves of anything useful, my mind drifts back to the reason I scavenge alone. I reflect on the large land-based camps located further inland, where groups of survivors have gathered for what they call safety in numbers. I try to join one of those communities early on, shortly after the water stopped rising. I hope to trade some of the rainbow trout I'd caught for basic medical supplies, and maybe a bit of companionship. Instead of a fair trade, I was met with eyes full of suspicion and greed. 3 men follow me back toward my boat and try to take my kayak and my boots, seeing a lone ranger as an easy target for a quick score. I managed to escape only because I knew the terrain better than they did, leading them into a treacherous rock slide they were too afraid to navigate. That day taught me that the social contract went underwater with the cities. I avoid those camps now, preferring predictable risks of the wilderness and the mountain lions to the volatility of desperate, hungry men. I spend hours moving through the upper floors, filling my dry bags with a collection of items that would have been trash a year ago but are now priceless. I find a few rolls of vacuum-sealed bandages in the bathroom cabinet, a rusted but functional multi-tool on a desk, and several boxes of matches stored in a high cabinet. The weight of the haul is significant, and I have to be careful not to overload the kayak. As I pack the bags in the hull, I feel the building shudder, a deep, subsonic groan of metal under stress. It's a reminder that this vertical graveyard is active, shifting and dying. I descend the stairs back to my boat as quickly as I can, the oppressive silence of the building pressing on me like a physical weight. Up here, among the ghosts of a dead civilization, the isolation feels much heavier than it does on the high ridges. Once back in the kayak, I begin the search for a safe, quiet cove. I can't return to my high camp until the tide turns and the winds die down. The ascent is too dangerous in the midday heat. I need a place to tuck the boat away where it won't be seen by any marauders patrolling the main water channels. The new coastline is a jagged mess of sudden inlets and sheer cliffs. I paddle for miles, staying close to the drowned trees to stay out of the wind. Finally, I find a narrow crack in the granite cliffside that opens into a small, sheltered basin. It's hidden from the open water by a dense screen of dead pines, and the current here is negligible. I pull the kayak onto a flat shelf of rock, well away from the reach of the high tides. I spend the next hour securing the boat, using camouflage netting and cut branches to break up its man-made silhouette. If someone paddles past, they'll see nothing but the same gray rock and dead wood that makes up the rest of the shore. With the boat safe, I begin to climb back toward the high ground. I refuse to spend the night this close to the water. The sound of the tides and the shifting, groaning buildings in the distance are too loud, too unsettling for a man who needs to keep his ears open for predators. I move inland, seeking the familiar safety of the ridges. I find a small, flat patch of earth tucked behind a stand of hardy mountain hemlocks that manage to survive the salt spray due to a fluke in the wind patterns. Here, I make a concealed camp for the night. No fires, no lights, not even the glow of my phone. I eat a small portion of the scavenged peanut butter, the fat and protein a welcome relief to my aching muscles. I stare out at the darkened coastline from behind a screen of needles. The city ruins look like black islands in the moonlight, their long shadows stretching across the water, like fingers reaching for the land they once occupied. The silence is absolute, broken only by the occasional distant groan of settling steel or the splash of a fish jumping in the bay. I find myself looking toward the high interior, toward the peaks of the Cascades that were once deep in the heart of the continent. I know there must be others out there, organized groups with actual resources, engineers, and scouts. I cling to the hope that mainlanders from the high interior will eventually send search parties to explore this new coastline. They'll be looking for survivors to bring back to the fold, for resources to rebuild, and for people who can map this broken, jagged world. They need someone who knows where the springs are, where the buildings are still standing, and how to navigate the drowned forest. I check the charge on my solar battery bank, seeing the faint, reassuring glow of the indicator lights. It's low after a day in the shadows of the city, but it will last through the night if I'm careful. I opened my Kindle and read a few pages of a survival guide on wilderness medicine, specifically the section on treating saltwater infections. I need to stay sharp, stay hidden, and stay healthy. If I get sick or injured, there is no one to call. I am the only law, the only doctor, and the only inhabitant of this specific stretch of the mountains. I lay back on my sleeping bag, my body aching from the day's physical and emotional toll. The scavenged rice and tools are heavy in my pack, a small but vital victory in a long, exhausting war of attrition. I think about the drowned forest and the city below, wondering how much longer they will stand before the ocean finally pulls them down into the dark forever. The buildings are grand, but the salt is patient. I close my eyes, the image of the skeletal trees and the dark water etched into my mind. Tomorrow, I will move back to my primary high ridge, back to the safety of the heights, and continue my long wait for the world to find me. Another day of scavenging. Another day survived in the graveyard of the old world. I am exhausted, but I am alive and in the Cascades. That is more than most can say. I listen to the wind until sleep finally takes me, dreaming of a world that is once again green and dry. I wake to the sharp, insistent gnawing of a growling stomach, a sound that seems to echo in the early morning stillness of the high Cascades. The small jar of peanut butter I salvaged yesterday is a treasure, but isn't enough to sustain the kind of caloric output this life demands. I need protein, real, fresh protein, and I need it before my energy reserves dip into the red. I've spent too many days scavenging the salt-choked ruins of the coastline, and my body is beginning to feel the effects of the sodium and the damp. Today, I decide to move toward the high country, toward a large inland lake nestled in a granite basin that I know from my ranger days is famous for its massive rainbow trout. It's a gamble, a grueling deeder that will test my endurance, but the hunger is a persistent, uncompromising motivator. The logistics of the move are daunting, enough to make a lesser man turn back. To reach the lake from my current position, I have to perform a 1-mile overland portage through some of the densest brush the mountains have to offer. In the old world, there were trails here, maintained by crews and worn smooth by thousands of hiking boots. Now, those trails are choked with rapid-growth alder, vine maple, and the debris of the massive storms that have battered the range since the impacts. I begin the process of lashing my gear into the hull of my 10-foot kayak, ensuring everything is centered to prevent the boat from tipping as I carry it. I use my climbing rope to create a modified shoulder harness, padding the straps with my extra socks and a bit of foam from an old sleeping pad to keep the nylon from cutting into my skin. The hike is a slow-motion torture that lasts for hours. The kayak is a clumsy, rigid beast on land, catching on every low-hanging branch and snagging on every outcrop of basalt. I move in 10-minute bursts, my heart hammering a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs and my vision swimming with the sheer physical effort. The smell of crushed pine needles and damp earth is overwhelming as I push through the thickets, the plastic hull of the boat screeching against the brush like a living thing in pain. Every 100 yards, I have to stop, leaning the boat against a tree while I wipe the stinging sweat from my eyes and check my footing. The terrain is a chaotic jumble of elevation gains and sudden drops, and a single slip with as much weight on my back will result in a broken limb I couldn't fix. I find myself talking to the trees, cursing the brush as if it were intentionally trying to hold me back. After what feels like a lifetime of agonizing progress, the trees finally thin, revealing the shimmering, sapphire blue expanse of the mountain lake. The sight of it acts like a shot of pure adrenaline. I stumble down the final slope and collapse on the rocky shore, my muscles trembling with exhaustion, so profound I can barely unclench my hand from the ropes. The water is crystal clear, fed by the high-altitude snowmelt that survived the initial flash melt of the glaciers. It is a world away from the gray, silt-heavy salt water of the drowned forest below. I take a moment to simply breathe, watching a hawk circle high above in the thin blue sky, before the hunger returns, sharper and more demanding than before. I don't waste time. I leave the kayak at the waterline and begin foraging for bait along the damp edges of the lake. I flip over rotting logs and dig into the soft, silken mud near the reeds until I find what I'm looking for: dragonfly larvae. They are ugly, prehistoric-looking creatures with their bulbous eyes and grasping mandibles, but to a rainbow trout, they are an irresistible delicacy. I gather a dozen of them in an old tin cup, then pull my collapsible fishing rod from the kayak. I cast a line into the deep shadow cast by a submerged granite shelf, my hand steadying as a ranger in me takes over. The strike is sudden and violent. The line zings as it cuts through the water, and I feel the familiar, electric thrill of a heavy fish on the hook. I play the line carefully, letting the fish tire itself out against the drag, before I bring it toward the shallows. It's a beautiful rainbow trout, 16 inches of silver and pink muscle. Within the hour, I have caught 3 more, enough to satisfy my hunger and provide a surplus for the evening. I gather dry driftwood and build a small, efficient fire tucked behind a natural rock windbreak to minimize the smoke profile. I don't want anyone or anything noticing a signal fire today. The scent of the fish searing over flames is almost intoxicating. I eat with ferocity. I'm not proud of the warm, fatty meat providing an immediate rush of energy to my depleted system. The protein feels like it's mending my muscles as I swallow. As I am finishing my second fish, a sound snaps my head up, the unmistakable snap of a dry branch. I drop my hand at the hilt of my knife. My body tends to flee or fight. I've learned the hard way that silence is the only safety, and noise usually means trouble. Out of the dense treeling emerge 2 figures, looking every bit as ragged and weary as I feel. A man and a woman, their clothes faded by the sun, and their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. I recognize them immediately from their gear and their gait. They are Julian and Clara, a couple I'd seen on the high trails just days before the world ended. They were avid hikers then, and it seems the mountains have been kind enough to let them stay alive, though they look like they've aged a decade in a single year. They stop 20 feet away, their hands raised in a gesture of peace. I see the hollows in their cheeks and the way they stare at the remains of my meal. They haven't eaten a real meal in days, maybe weeks. I hesitate for only a heartbeat before I gesture for them to come closer. There's plenty, I say, my voice sounding gravelly and strange even in my own ears. I offer them the remaining fish, watching as they fall upon the food with the same desperation I had felt moments ago. They explained that they were navigating the high trails when the tsunamis hit, and they've been moving ever since, trying to stay ahead of the larger groups that have turned the lower basins into territories of theft and violence. They tell me about the ridge runners and the desperate camps where people are traded like currency. I tell them they can camp here tonight in the safety of this hidden lake. The large groups never venture this far on foot, I explain, gesturing to the rugged, vertical terrain we'd all just crossed. They like the easy ground, where they can move their stolen vehicles and keep their supply lines short. They won't follow you into the brush, not for 2 people. Julian and Clara look at me with profound, quiet gratitude that makes the isolation of the last year feel suddenly less absolute. We spend the evening sharing stories in hushed tones as the stars begin to fill the sky. They talk about the chaos they saw in the valleys, and I talk about the drowned forest and the vertical graveyard. We discuss the changes in the climate, the way the clouds seem heavier now, and the strange new birds that have moved into mountains. For a few hours, we aren't just survivors. We are human beings again, sharing a meal and a fire. The next morning, we share a final breakfast of fresh trout. The lake is calm, reflecting the peaks like a mirror. I can see the strength returning to their limbs, the hope returning to their eyes. They look less like ghosts and more like the hikers I once knew. Before they depart, I pull a small kit from my pack. I gift them several yards of high-string fishing line, a handful of sharpened hooks, and a few of my best lures. I spent an hour showing Julian how to identify the best places to find bait and how to read the surface of the water to find where the trout are hiding. I teach him about the temperature of the water and how the fish move as the sun climbs. Stay high, I tell them as they shoulder their packs. The water is still changing, but the mountains will give you what you need if you know where to look. Avoid the smoke and the sound of engines. They thank me, their voices thick with emotion, and disappear back into the dense green of the Cascades. Watching them leave, I feel a strange pang of loneliness, but also a sense of purpose. I help them. I'm still a ranger in some way. With the lake camp cleared, I decide not to return the way I came. I've seen enough of that 1-mile portage to last a lifetime, and my shoulders are still bruised from the straps. Instead, I study my mental maps of the drainage systems, visualizing the topography of the region. I know there's a small, swift-moving river that connects this basin back to the bay. It will be a different route, one that requires navigating white water in a loaded kayak, but it beats carrying the boat through the brush. I launch into the current, the kayak feeling nimble and fast as the water takes hold of the hull. The transition from the still lake to the moving river is a rush, a reminder of the power of nature that I've come to respect so deeply. The river is a corridor of beauty and destruction. I paddle past ancient cedars that have fallen into the water, creating dangerous sweepers I have to dodge with precision. The banks are eroded in places, showing the scars of the massive floods from a year ago. Halfway down the descent, where the river narrows and the current speeds up, I spot something that makes me back paddle into an eddy. An old Forest Service bridge spans the river, its concrete pillars cracked but still standing. Perched precariously near the edge of the broken pavement is an abandoned SUV, a relic of the panicked evacuation. It's tilted at a dangerous angle, half buried in the silt and branches brought up by the initial surges. I tie the kayak to a bridge piling and climb up to the vehicle, moving carefully to avoid tipping it into the river. It's a gold mine for someone like me. The windows are smashed and the body is dented, but the interior has remained relatively dry thanks to its position above the waterline. I scavenge a pair of heavy-duty, waterproof Gore-Tex bibs, an upgrade that will make my rainy days much more tolerable. I find a high-quality dry bag that is far better than the one I'm currently using. Its seal's still perfect. I also find a small, handheld GPS unit in the center console. It's dead, of course, but it's a piece of tech that I might be able to revive with my solar pack. More importantly, I find a small stash of high-energy bars in the glove compartment, still sealed. I pack the new gear into the kayak, the extra weight making the boat sit lower in the water, but provided me with a sense of security I haven't felt in a long time. The final stretch of the river opens up into the bay, the salt water mixing with the fresh in a swirling dance of blue and green. I look back toward the mountain lake, grateful for the fish, the brief moment of companionship, and the salvage. I have more gear, a full stomach, and the knowledge that there are still good people left in the ruins. The kayak glides over the calm water of the bay, passing to the first of the skeletal trees of the drowned forest. I feel the weight of the new supplies in the hull, a reminder of my successful journey. As I paddle back toward my high ridge camp, the solar pack on my bag catches the midday sun, its green lights glowing steadily as it drinks in energy. I am moving, I am fed, and for the first time in a year, I don't feel entirely alone in the Cascades. I reach my cove, secure the boat with a new dry bag tucked safely inside, and begin to climb back to my ridge. The new waterproof gear feels like a suit of armor against the world to come. I reach my camp and look out over the horizon, the Kindle in my pack ready to offer me a story to end the night. Another day, another survival, and another step toward whatever future this broken world has in store. I am a ranger of the Cascades, and I am still on duty. I spend the rest of the afternoon meticulously organizing my new finds. The Gore-Tex bibs fit perfectly, and I feel a surge of satisfaction knowing I won't be shivering in a wet kayak during the next storm. I take the GPS unit and connect it to my solar bank, watching with bated breath as the screen flickers to life for a split second before dying again. It will take time to charge, but even the hint of life in the device is a thrill. I think about Julian and Clara, wondering where they are now and if they found a good spot to cast their lines. The thought of them out there, using the hooks I gave them, makes the mountain feel a little less hostile. The ridge runners they mention weigh on my mind, though it means I need to be even more careful, even more hidden. I look at my camp, checking the camouflage netting and the lines of my tent. I am small, I am quiet, and I am prepared. The sunset is particularly vibrant tonight, casting long, purple shadows across the drowned forest below. I sit on my granite perch, chewing on one of the scavenged energy bars, and feel a sense of peace that only comes from a day of hard, successful work. The Cascades are quiet tonight, and for now, that is enough. I will keep my gear ready, my eyes on the horizon, and my heart guarded. The world has changed, but I am still standing. The morning air at the hidden mountain lake is a cold, damp blanket that clings to the granite walls of the basin. I wake with the stiffness of the previous day's portage still deep in my marrow, a dull ache that radiates from my shoulders down to my lower back. There is no time for indulgence. The seasons are shifting the Cascades, and the rhythm of survival is dictated by the migrations of the world below and the weather patterns above. I need to move again. To reach the next hunting ground, I face a grueling overland portage of my kayak across a high, jagged ridge that separates this basin from a northern drainage. This isn't like the lowland brush I fought through yesterday. This is a vertical ascent where every foot progress is paid for in sweat, strained tendons, and the constant fear of a catastrophic fall. I begin the meticulous process of lashing my gear into the hull of the 10-foot kayak. I've learned that a shifting load is more dangerous than a heavy one. I place my tent and sleeping bag in the stern and nestle the small clip-on solar-powered battery bank in a waterproof case right in the center to ensure the weight remains balanced. I use my climbing ropes to create a complex multi-point harness, padding the contact points with sections of a foam pad I salvaged months ago. As I hoist the bow onto my shoulder, the weight of the plastic hull groans against my frame, a sound that seems to vibrate through my collarbone. I begin the climb, leaving the sapphire water of the hidden lake behind. The terrain is a nightmare of loose scree and ancient basalt flows that have been shattered by centuries of freeze-thaw cycles. I have to kick steps into the shifting rock, dragging the kayak upward inch by agonizing inch. My breath comes in ragged, burning gas that whistle in the thin alpine air, tasting of iron and cold stone. Every time the boat snags on a stunted hemlock or a sharp rock edge, the jolt threatens to pull me backward down the slope. It takes 4 hours of concentrated, bone-deep effort to reach the crest of the ridge. I stand at the summit, the kayak resting like a heavy cross across my shoulders, and look out over a sea of peaks that have become both my sanctuary and my prison. The descent on the other side is equally treacherous, requiring me to use the kayak as a sled in places, guiding it down steep gullies of melting snow and slick mud. By the time I reach the valley floor, my hands are raw and my legs are trembling with fatigue, so profound I can barely stand. I have reached an area where the old world still leaves visible scars, a valley that was once a prime destination for timber extraction. I begin utilizing ancient Forest Service trails and overgrown mountain paths to move between my different hunting and foraging grounds. These trails are ghost roads, nearly erased by a year of unchecked growth and winter storms. Thick carpets of emerald moss have swallowed the tread, and massive blowdowns of Douglas force me to lift a kayak over rotting trunks that are wider than I am tall. Yet, these paths are vital. They allow me to move through the dense interior without the noise and exhaustion of bushwhacking, keeping me silent and invisible to anything that might be watching from the slopes above. I move like a shadow, my ears tuned to the snap of a twig or the sudden silence of birds. The transition between the high peaks and the valley floors is where the real work of seasonal preparation begins. The air here is heavier, smelling of damp earth and the sweet, fermented scent of decaying wood. I find a promising stretch of forest where the canopy is dense enough to have kept the ground moist despite the lack of recent rain. I spend the entire afternoon scavenging for worms under rotting logs. I move slowly, rolling over heavy trunks of hemlock and digging my fingers deep into the rich, black humus. This isn't just about immediate hunger. I am preparing for the upcoming salmon run. In the old world, the salmon were a miracle of nature. Now, they are the difference between a winter of slow starvation and a winter of strength. I collect the thick, pale earthworms, each one a vital piece of bait, and store them in a ventilated tin with damp moss, knowing they're the best way to catch the fish in the river sections that haven't been entirely ruined by the rising salt levels. The work is tedious, my fingernails becoming caked with dirt, but there is a meditative quality to it. Every worm found is a potential calorie, a tiny insurance policy against the cold months to come. As I move deeper into the drainage, following a trail that was once a popular route for weekend backpackers, I notice something that makes the hair on my neck stand up. The forest is too quiet. The usual chatter of squirrels and the rustle of birds have vanished, replaced by a heavy, expectant stillness. I leave the kayak hidden under a canopy of low-hanging cedar boughs, covering it with dead ferns to break up its shape. I move forward on foot, my boots making no sound on the deep moss. That is when I make the discovery of a small, hidden canopy camp where survivors live in the trees to stay off the main trails. It is an ingenious construction of rope bridges, wooden platforms, and camouflage tarps suspended 50 feet above the forest floor. I stay low, peering through the brush at the intricate network of cables. It is silent, and from the ground, it is nearly invisible unless you know exactly what to look for: a slightly too straight line of a rope or the unnatural flat green of a heavy-duty tarp. I don't call out. I don't make my presence known. I've learned that anyone living in the trees is doing so because they are hiding from the same things I am. I watch for a long time, seeing a single thin wisp of smoke from a well-hidden stove, but no people. This is a sanctuary for the fearful, a fragile community suspended between the earth and the sky, and I respect their silence by maintaining my own. I begin to withdraw, moving back toward my hidden boat, but a flash of movement on a distant, higher ridge catches my eye. It isn't the erratic bounce of a deer or the heavy lumbering of a bear. It's a rhythmic, purposeful stride. My heart hammers against my ribs as I realize I am being tracked by ridge runners who patrol the high ground between the larger survivor camps. These aren't the desperate, starving scavengers of the coast. These are hunters, men who have maintained their fitness, their gear, and their cruelty to dominate the high-altitude corridors. They move with an efficiency that suggests they know these trails as well as I do, perhaps better. They're looking for people like me, lone survivors with high-quality gear worth stealing, or information worth beating out a captive. I see two of them, silhouetted against a leaden gray sky, moving parallel to the trail I just used. They aren't running. They are stalking, closing the distance with a terrifying lack of hurry, confident in their ability to run down anything they find. The hunt begins in earnest. I retreat to the cedar thicket and retrieve the kayak, but I can't carry it over my shoulder now. The profile is too large, a beacon for their binoculars. I have to drag it through the softest moss and the deepest shadows, moving toward the higher, more broken ground where the fog is beginning to roll in from the new coast. What follows is a silent, desperate game of cat and mouse through the dense fog of the high-altitude forest as I attempt to return to my base camp. The mist is my only ally, thick and cold, tasting of salt and pine. It swallows the light and distorts sound, making every dripping branch sound like a footfall and every breath sound like a shout. I move in erratic patterns, doubling back over rocky ground where I leave no tracks, and pausing for long, agonizing minutes to listen. I can hear them occasionally, the metallic clink of a carabiner on a pack, the low, guttural murmur of a voice. They are close enough that I can smell the stale tobacco and wood smoke on the wind. I navigate by memory, by the feel of the incline under my boots, and by the subtle slope of the land, avoiding the established trails that they are undoubtedly watching. My goal is a narrow, treacherous chimney of rock that leads back to my primary ridge camp, a shortcut that requires a near-vertical scramble. It is a path no one in their right mind would take while dragging a kayak, but it is the only way to break the line of sight and disappear into the vertical world. I wedge the boat into a deep crevice and climb into a hollow above it, waiting in the absolute, suffocating silence of fog. I see one of the ridge runners pass directly below me, a shadow in the gray, his rifle held at the ready across his chest. He stops, sniffing the air like a predator, his head turning slowly as he scans a miss for any sign of a break. For a moment, I am certain he sees me. My hand is white-knuckled on the hilt of my knife, my breath held until my lungs ache with sharp, stabbing pain. He moves on, convinced the trail has gone cold or that the fog has hidden his prey too well. I wait for an hour after the last sound of their passage has faded, my body shaking with the aftereffect of the adrenaline. The fog doesn't lift. It only grows thicker, turning the forest into a world of ghosts and half-formed shapes. I finally extract the kayak from the rock and begin the final, grueling climb back to my ridge. When I finally reach the safety of my camp, I am beyond exhaustion, my mind a frayed wire. I secure the boat under its overhang, check the camouflage netting for any gaps, and crawl into my tent without lighting a fire. I sit in the dark, the small clip-on battery bank, providing a faint light in the corner from its integrated flashlight. I am safe for now, but the ridge runners are a reminder that the high ground is no longer a secret. The world is getting smaller, the survivors more desperate, and the mountain is becoming a battlefield. I check my Kindle, seeking the comfort of story, but my eyes won't focus on the words. I simply listen to the wind, a ranger in a park that has become a hunting ground, waiting for morning to show me who is still left on the mountain and how much closer shadows have come. The following hours are spent in a state of hypervigilance. I don't sleep, I listen. The snap of a twig, the rustle of a small animal in the brush. Each sound sends a jolt of electricity through my system. I think about the canopy camp I found. How many people are up there, tucked away in the branches? Do they watch the ridge runners from above, holding their breath just like I did? The idea of others surviving so close by is both a comfort and a threat. If they are there, the runners know it or will soon. I realize my isolation, while a shield, is also making me a target. There is no one to watch my back while I sleep, no one to help me carry the boat, no one to share the burden of the hunt. I look at my gear, the tools of my survival, and realize they are also the things that make me worth killing. As the dawn finally breaks, casting a pale, sickly light through the dissipating fog, I begin to pack my camp with a renewed sense of urgency. I can't stay on this ridge much longer. The runners will return, and they will be more thorough next time. They've seen my tracks, even if they didn't see me. I need to find a new water source soon, as the seasonal drying of the mountain springs is already beginning to affect the lower drainages. The creek I've been using is down to a trickle, the rocks becoming slick with algae. My survival has always been a game of movement, a chess match against an environment that is constantly changing, and the board has just become much more dangerous. I look at the kayak, its hull scarred by a year's struggle, and know that we will have to find a way to disappear even deeper into the Cascades. I spend the morning improving the camouflage of my land camp to a point of near perfection. I gather lichen-covered stones and dead, gray branches, weaving them into the netting that covers my tent. I am careful to avoid creating any new trails, stepping only on rocks or hard ground. I move like a ghost, leaving no trace of my presence. From more than 20 feet away, the camp should look like nothing more than a natural outcrop of granite and debris, a forgotten corner of a dying world. As I work, I keep my eyes on the lower slopes, watching for any sign of the ridge runners returning. The fog is cleared, revealing the drowned forest below in stark detail. The skeletal trunks shimmer in the morning light, a vast graveyard that stretches as far as the eye can see. It is a beautiful, terrible sight, a reminder of the power of the water that changed everything and the resilience of the land that remains. By midday, the sun is high enough to provide a decent charge to my small battery bank. I clip it onto a south-facing branch, making sure the small panel is angled to catch the maximum amount of light. I spend a few minutes reading a survival guide on my Kindle, specifically a section on long-term water storage and filtration. I know the springs higher up are the most reliable, but they are also the most exposed, sitting on open slopes where a man is easily spotted from a distance. The struggle for fresh water is about to become my primary focus, even over food. I think about Julian and Clara again, wondering if they made it to a safe harbor or if they fell prey to the runners. The mountain is indifferent to their fate, just as it is to mine. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, stretching across the granite like long, dark fingers, I start a small, smokeless fire to boil some of the water I have left. I use a tiny stove I salvaged, feeding it small twigs to keep the flame contained. The process is time-consuming but necessary to avoid the pathogens that have flourished in the disrupted ecosystem. I sit by the tiny flame, watching the bubbles rise in my metal pot, and feel a sense of profound, crushing solitude. I am Kale, the last ranger of a park that no longer exists, patrolling a coastline that was never supposed to be here. I am a ghost, a scavenger, and a survivor. And as long as I can move, as long as I can hide, and as long as I can find a way to stay on the high ground, I will keep going. The ridge runners are out there, and the water is drying up, but the Cascades are vast, a labyrinth of stone and timber. I know their secrets better than any hunter from the lowlands. I know where the hidden caves are, where the underground streams break the surface, and where the air is too thin for those who haven't spent a year breathing it. I will survive the next hunt, and the one after that. I have to. The salmon run is coming, and with it, the chance to store enough fat to survive the coming winter. I will be ready for them. I will be ready for the fish, and I will be ready for the men who want what I have. Night falls quickly in the mountains, the temperature dropping 40 degrees in an hour. I retreat into my tent, the fabric snapping softly in the cold evening breeze. I turn on my Kindle and lose myself in the story of a world that was once dry and predictable, a world where the biggest worry was a traffic jam or a missed phone call. I find a hand crank on the small battery bank and give it a few minutes of steady winding. The mechanical were a small, rhythmic comfort in the dark. It is my primary mental escape, a way to forget the way of the kayak and the predatory eyes of the runners for a few hours. As I drift into a light, fitful sleep, I dream of the salmon, thousands of silver bodies surging up the rivers, a tide of life returning to the mountains to spawn and die. It is a dream of hope, and the Cascades of 2026. Hope is the most precious resource of all. I will be there to meet them. I will be there to survive. Another day on the ridge, another night in the dark. I am still here. I am still the ranger. I close my eyes and let the mountain hold me until the sun returns to start the cycle over again. I will not be found. I will not be taken. I am part of the stone now. I wake to the sound of a heavy, unnatural silence pressing down on the ridge. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the sharp, metallic tang of an approaching storm. I crawl out of my tent and immediately check the perimeter of my camp, my eyes scanning the gray granite for anything that doesn't belong. There are no intruders, but the mountain feels different today, crowded, as if the walls are closing in. I look down toward the lower drainages and see a thin, dark line of smoke rising from a valley that should be empty. It's a signal that the larger land camps are pushing higher into the Cascades, driven by the desperation of a world that is running out of easy resources. The pressure of these encroaching camps is no longer a distant threat. It is a physical weight. I spend the morning preparing for a descent into a lower basin to check the seasonal spring. But the trip is interrupted by a scene involving a narrow escape from a predatory land camp scout. As I move through a narrow rock chimney with the kayak, I spot him. He is wearing the rugged, scavenged tactical gear of the Harbor Kings, and he is moving with a focused intensity that tells me he isn't just wandering. He is mapping the water sources. I don't let him see me. I freeze against a vertical face of basalt. the plastic hull of my boat pressed tight against the stone to prevent any glare. I watch him through my binoculars as he marks a waypoint on a handheld device. He is less than 50 yards away, and I can hear the crunch of his boots on the shale. I don't stay to find out what he does next. I wait until he crests the next rise. Then I pivot, taking a treacherous, high-altitude route over a scree slope that no scout would expect a man with a boat to navigate. I outrun him by sheer knowledge of the terrain, moving through shadows and fog until I am certain the distance between us is unbridgeable. I sabotage the trail behind me, rolling heavy stones and piling deadfall to make the path look like the site of a natural landslide, ensuring no one follows that route to my camp. With the scout behind me, I refocus on the primary goal of the season, the salmon run. I move my operations toward a high-altitude creek that I know the fish will reach if the water levels stay high. I find myself in a scene involving the preparation of a traditional wooden weir and a complex series of traps made from salvaged wire and cedar slats. This is a massive, exhausting undertaking. I spend days standing knee-deep in freezing snowmelt, moving heavy boulders to create a funnel that will guide the salmon into my traps. My hands are constantly numb, the skin cracking and bleeding from the combination of cold water and rough stone. I use a small clip-on solar battery bank and its hand crank to power my Kindle, sitting by my small fire at night to study the detailed diagrams of indigenous fishing techniques. I have to be precise. If the weir is too weak, the force of the water will shatter it. If it is too obvious, it will draw the attention of the ridge runners. I weave the cedar slats with salvaged paracord, creating a structure that is both flexible and strong, a testament to the old-world knowledge I carry on my plastic device. While I am working on the final stone placement for the weir, I am approached by the Vance family, Garrett, Nora, and their 3 kids. They are a ragged, exhausted group I've spotted on the lower ridges over the last few months. They aren't like the scouts. They are civilians, people who lost everything and are just trying to find a patch of ground that isn't being fought over. They have settled in a sheltered bowl a few hundred yards below my new weir site. I find myself in a scene involving sharing the locations of hidden springs with them. Garrett, a former engineer who still wears a rusted watch as if the time matters, looks at the integrated emergency flashlight on the battery bank with a spark of genuine curiosity. I lead him to a hidden seat behind a thick curtain of moss and ferns, a source of water that is naturally filtered by the earth and remains cool even in the direct sun. Keep this area undisturbed, I tell him, my voice low. The scouts are marking every visible pool. If they see trampled mud, they'll know you're here. Nora thanks me with a look of such profound relief it makes my chest ache. I spend an hour teaching their oldest boy, Sam, how to track a mountain lion and how to move through the brush without snapping a single twig. It's a ranger's duty, and for a moment, the mountain feels a little less like a graveyard and more like a community. As the days grow shorter and the first salmon begin to appear in the lower pools, the tension in the Cascades reaches a breaking point. I find myself in a silent game of cat and mouse through the dense fog of the high-altitude forest as I attempt to return to my base. The ridge runners are everywhere, their presence a constant shadow in the mist. I am moving my kayak back from the creek after checking the weir when I hear the low hum of a drone. I have to dive under a heavy canopy of hemlock, pulling the kayak over me like a shell. I wait for an hour, the dampness of the earth seeping into my clothes, until the sound fades. The hunters are using technology now, and the high ground is no longer a guarantee of invisibility. I spend the following hours moving with extreme caution. Every snap of a twig feels like a gunshot in the stagnant air. I navigate by the memory of the land, feeling the tilt of the granite beneath my feet. When I finally reach my camp, I am exhausted, but the weir is secure. The Vance family has remained hidden, and the scout's trail remains cold. I check the charge on the battery bank and see the green lights glowing in the twilight. I opened my Kindle, the screen a soft glow in the dark, and read about the ancient migrations. The fish are coming, and with them, the promise of life. I am Kale, the ranger of this broken range, and I will be ready to meet them. I will protect this weir. I will protect the Vance family, and I will protect the secrets of this mountain. The world may be underwater, but up here, we are still standing. The process of constructing the weir is a labor of love and survival. Each stone I carry from the bank is heavy, slick with moss and the residue of the glacier. I place them one by one, forming a wide V that points upstream. The water rushes against my legs, a numbing cold that reminds me of the power I am trying to harness. I use cedar saplings for the upright posts, driving them deep into gravel bed with a heavy rock. I weave the slats through these posts, creating a mesh that will let the water pass but hold the massive salmon. I think about the generations of people who built these same structures in these same rivers for thousands of years. They knew the rhythms of the earth, and now I am learning them too. The Kindle provides the blueprints, but the mountain provides the materials. It is a collaboration across time. When the first salmon finally hits the weir, the sound is unmistakable, a heavy thud and a frantic splashing. I wade out into the current, my heart racing. It is a massive sockeye, its body a brilliant, bruised red against the gray stones. I harvest it quickly, my multi-tool sharp and efficient. This single fish represents days of calories, a vital boost for the coming winter. I share the catch with Garrett and Nora, showing them how to smoke the meat over a low, dry fire to preserve it. We work together in the dim light of the evening, the smoke of our fire hidden by the dense canopy of the trees. The children watch with wide eyes, their hunger finally being replaced by the primal satisfaction of successful hunt. For the first time in a year, we aren't just surviving, we are thriving. As the run intensifies, the river becomes a churning mass of silver and red. We harvest dozens of fish, our smoke racks full and our spirits lifted. But I know this abundance comes with a price. The smell of the fish and the smoke of the fires will eventually draw the attention of the ridge runners. I increase my patrols, moving light and fast through the upper ridges to watch for any sign of movement. I see their campfires in the distance, small points of orange light against the black of the mountains. They are searching, and they are hungry too. I prepare my defenses, setting up false trails and dead ends to lead them away from our hidden bowl. I am a ghost, a guardian, and I will not let them take what we have built. The Cascades are our home now, and we will fight to keep it. I spend my nights reading by the light of the battery's emergency flashlight, the Kindle offering me stories of resilience and hope. I read about the great explorers who mapped these mountains and the indigenous tribes who lived in harmony with the land. I realize that I am a part of that history now. I am a ranger, but I am also a pioneer of a new, broken world. I will keep my gear maintained, I will keep my family safe, and I will keep the memory of the old world alive. The salmon run will end, and the winter will come, but we will be ready. The battery lights glow steady in my tent, a small beacon of civilization in the wild. Another day, another fish, another victory. I am Kale, and this is my mountain. I am not going anywhere. I am the master of the weir and protector of the high ground. The hunters can search the fog, but they will never find us. We are the stone and the water, and we are here to stay. The morning of the final harvest arrives with sky the color of a bruised plum, the heavy clouds hanging so low they seem to scrape against the jagged peaks of the surrounding ridges. The air is thick, pressing down on the Cascades with humidity that suggests the atmosphere itself is struggling to hold back the next great deluge. I wake before the sun, the cold air of the tent a sharp contrast to the warmth of my sleeping bag. I move toward the weir at first light. My boots find the familiar grip of the granite path I've worn into the ridge over the last few weeks. This is a culmination of months of preparation, a moment that will determine if the Vance family and I have enough stores to survive the deep freeze of the alpine winter. The creek is a churning riot of red and silver, the sockeye salmon packed so tightly into the funnel of my weir that the water seems to hum with their collective desperation. It is a primal scene, a pulse of life that feels ancient and unstoppable. I find myself in a scene involving a final large harvest of salmon at the weir. I wade into the freezing current, the water clawing at my hips and threatening to pull my feet from the slick river stones. With a hand-carved spear and a heavy net salvaged from the drowned forest, I begin the work. It is visceral, exhausting labor that burns in my shoulders and forearms. Each fish is a heavy, powerful muscle, fighting against the inevitable with a strength that demands respect. I toss them onto the bank where Garrett and Sam wait with sharpened knives, their hands moving with a practiced speed they didn't possess a month ago. We work in a rhythmic, focused silence, the only sounds being the rush of the water, the wet slap of scales, and the occasional thud of a fish hitting the moss. The sheer volume of the harvest is overwhelming. We process the fish right there on the bank, gutting them and prepping them for the smoke racks I built last week. The smell is pungent, the scent of cold blood and fresh water, but to us, it is the smell of security. Sam works beside me, his young face set in a grim mask of concentration. I watch him and realize how much he has changed. He is no longer a child of the old world, but predator of a new one. By midday, the bank is covered in hundreds of pounds of high-protein meat. This is our lifeblood, the currency of our survival. And as I look at the pile, I feel a rare moment of genuine pride. We have outsmarted the mountain, at least for today. While we are processing the catch, Nora approaches from the high lookout with a look of sharp, crystalline concern that stops my heart. She doesn't need to speak. I see in the way she grips her radio, her knuckles white. I climb the steep incline to the vantage point and look through the binoculars toward the eastern pass. My heart sinks. I see signs of a major mainland scout expedition approaching the coast. These aren't the ragged, desperate ridge runners or the local harbor kings I've spent the year avoiding. These are professionals. They are moving in a tight military formation, equipped with high-altitude gear and long-range communication arrays that glint with a clinical coldness in the weak sunlight. They have pack animals, hardy mules carrying heavy crates, and drones that zip through the valleys like angry hornets. They aren't here to scavenge. They are here to survey and reclaim. They represent the high interior, the organized remnants of a world that thinks it can still impose order on this chaos. They are mapping the new coastline, and we are right in their path. The arrival of the scouts forces a decision that I've been avoiding for months, a choice between the stability we've built and the freedom I crave. I find myself in a scene involving a final decision to move further inland to avoid the scouts. We gather in the center of our small camp, the smell of smoking fish hanging heavy in the air. The mountain is no longer big enough to hide us if we stay on this ridge. If we are caught, we will be cataloged, integrated into a system, or displaced to a camp where we are just numbers on a manifest. I look at Garrett and Nora, seeing the raw fear in their eyes. They've spent a year running from the violence of the coastal camps, and the thought of being managed by a new authority is as terrifying as any marauder. We decide to abandon the ridge. We will move deeper into the rugged interior, into the high shadows, where the terrain is so vertical and the weather so unpredictable that even the most organized expedition would hesitate to follow. It means leaving the weir, the most reliable food source we've ever had. But freedom has always had a high price in the Cascades. The transition is frantic and fueled by a desperate energy. We spend the next 48 hours in a scene involving the final pack-up of the camp. I disassemble the small clip-on solar battery bank with the care of a surgeon, wrapping the unit and its hand cranking several layers of protective wool and stowing them in the most stable, padded section of the kayak's hull. We pack the smoked salmon into vacuum-sealed bags, squeezing out every pocket of air to ensure they last. What we can't carry, We bury in a hidden stone cached deep within a granite cleft, marking it only with a mental map that I hope I don't forget. My 10-foot kayak is loaded to the absolute limit, the plastic hull groaning under the weight as I prepare to move it toward the headwaters of the river. We are obsessive about leaving no trace. We scatter the ashes of our fires into the creek, fluff the moss where our tent stood until the impressions vanish, and camouflage the weir with dead branches and river debris so it looks like a natural log jam. By the time we are finished, the ridge looks like it hasn't seen a human soul since the world fell silent. The departure is a somber, ghostly affair. We move out under the cover of a thick, low-hanging fog that rolls in from the coast just as the scouts reach the lower basins. The mist is so dense I can barely see some walking 5 feet in front of me. I lead the way, the kayak harness digging into my shoulders with a renewed, biting ferocity. We are moving toward the Forbidden Plateaus, a region of the Cascades characterized by jagged peaks, sheer drop-offs, and hidden valleys that remain snow-locked for 9 months of the year. It is a gamble, a bet against the coming winter, but it is our only chance to remain ghosts in a world that is trying to find us. As we crest the final ridge and look back our old home, I see the sharp, rhythmic flash of a scout's signal mirror from the valley below. They are close, far closer than I realized, but we are already fading into the gray nothingness of the high country. The hike is a grueling test of our remaining strength. I navigate the small group through a labyrinth of narrow canyons and hidden passes that don't appear on any of the maps saved on my Kindle. The terrain is brutal, designed by nature to break the will of anyone who tries to conquer it. We move in a single file, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of our boots on the shale and the heavy breathing of the children. The Vance kids are remarkably quiet, their young faces hardened into masks of endurance that no child should have to wear. I feel a profound, heavy sense of responsibility for them. I am no longer just a ranger patrolling a park. I am a guide leading a small tribe of survivors through the end of the world. We reach a high, sheltered meadow by nightfall, a place where the water is pure and the wind is blocked by a circle of ancient, gnarled hemlocks. We make a cold camp, huddled together for warmth in a single tent, as the first snowflakes of the season begin to drift down from a black, indifferent sky. The next morning, the world is transformed into a silent, white wilderness. A thin layer of snow covers the meadow, softening the jagged edges of the peaks and hiding our tracks from the world below. We continue our journey, moving higher and deeper into the interior where the air is thin and sharp. I find myself in a scene involving a final look at the drowned forest from a distance. From this altitude, the graveyard trees looks like a small, insignificant gray smudge against the vast, terrifying blue of the new sea. The scale of the world is so different now. The cities are gone, the roads are gone, and even the maps I carry on my Kindle are becoming relics of a different planet, blueprints for a house that burned down. I feel a strange, unexpected sense of peace. We are no longer defined by what we lost. We are defined by the life we are carving out of the silence of the heights. As we reach the edge of the Forbidden Plateaus, I find the place I've been looking for, a perfect spot for our new permanent camp. It is a natural cave system tucked behind a frozen waterfall, the ice forming a translucent blue curtain that hides the entrance. The interior is dry and spacious, with a sandy floor and enough room for all of us to live comfortably through the winter. I set up the small solar battery bank on a narrow, south-facing ledge where it will catch the meager winter sun, and I begin the work of securing our new home. Garrett, ever the engineer, begins designing a more permanent ventilation system for the cave using salvage pipe, while Nora and the kids organize our stores of smoked salmon and gathered roots. We are a team, a small, stubborn unit of humanity holding out against the encroaching dark. The final scene of the journey involves a quiet moment on the ledge overlooking the valley as the sun dips below the horizon. I sit with my Kindle, scrolling through the stories I've read 100 times until the words are etched into my memory. I stop on a passage about the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that we have always been a species that finds a way to survive in the cracks of the world. I look out at the peaks, the snow-capped sentinels that have become my family. The scouts are out there, the ridge runners are out there, and the sea is still rising, but up here, we are free. I am Kale, the ranger of the high shadows, and I have found my park. The Cascades are silent, save for the wind and the soft, rhythmic crunch of the snow under my boots. I turn off the Kindle and close my eyes. The indicator lights of the battery pack a steady, reassuring glow in the twilight. We are home. The work of settling in is never-ending. I spend the following days reinforcing the entrance of the cave, using heavy boulders and layers of camouflage netting to ensure we remain invisible from both the ground and the air. I am meticulous, checking every angle to make sure no light escapes from our small, efficient cooking fire. We use only dry, smokeless wood, mountain hemlock, and subalpine fir that I gather from the sheltered gullies. The discipline of survival has become second nature to us. We move with a quiet efficiency that leaves no trace. I find myself teaching Sam the finer points of winter tracking, showing him how to distinguish between the print of a mountain goat and the print of a man in the shifting snow. The knowledge I pass on is the only heritage I have left to give, but it is more valuable than gold. One evening, as the stars begin to pierce the thin mountain air like diamonds on black velvet, I see another signal from the far north. It is the same 3-flash pulse I saw weeks ago, but this time it is closer, more insistent, emanating from a peak I know to be nearly impassable. It isn't the scouts. Their lights are too steady, too clinical. This is something else. Perhaps another group like the Vance, or a pocket of civilization that has managed to hold on in the deep interior against all odds. I don't answer. Not yet. The mountain has taught me that curiosity is a luxury I can't afford. I need to know who they are before I reveal our position. For now, we will remain in the shadows, watching and waiting. The mountain is our fortress, and the snow is our veil. I look at the 10-foot kayak resting in the back of the cave. Its hull a testament to the thousands of miles we've traveled together through the ruins of the Cascades. It is more than just a boat. It is a symbol of my journey from the drowned world to the high shadows, a piece of the old world that I've forced to adapt. I run my hand over the scarred plastic, feeling the history of the year in every gouge, scratch, and salt stain. I am tired, my body a collection of aches, old injuries, and the persistent chill of the heights, but my mind is clear and sharp. We have survived the first year of a new world, and we have done so on our own terms, without bending the knee to anyone. The salmon run saved us. The battery bank kept us sane, and the mountain kept us hidden. As the winter settles in for real, the forbidden plateaus become a world of absolute white and deep, freezing blue. The storms are frequent and fierce, the wind howling to crags like a living thing seeking entry. But inside the cave, we are warm and fed. We spend our days sharing stories and planning for the spring that feels like a lifetime away. I find myself reading aloud from the Kindle by the fire, the words of the old world providing a bridge to the new one we are creating. The children listen with rapt attention, their imaginations fueled by stories of forests that were green all year and seas that stay within their designated basins. We are the keepers of the memory, the guardians of the flame in a world that has gone cold. I am Kale, and I am still a ranger. My park has changed, and my duties have evolved from trail maintenance to tribe guarding, but my purpose remains the same: to protect and to serve those who are under my care. I will watch the horizon, I will maintain the gear, and I will ensure that the Vance family sees the next spring. The world may be broken and submerged, but here, in the high shadows of the Cascades, we are whole and unbroken. I check the solar indicator one last time before bed. 2 green lights. It is enough. It has to be enough. I crawl into my sleeping bag and fall into a deep, dreamless sleep, the silence of the mountain a heavy, comforting shroud over my head. We are still here. We will always be here. The scouts will draw their maps, but they will never find the heart of the mountain. I am Kale. I am the ranger, and this is my story.